Two women turned 72 the same summer in the same small town on streets that were only a 10-minute walk apart. They had known each other for years, the way women in small towns do. A wave at the post office, a conversation at the church rummage sale, a shared umbrella once, long ago, at a rainy 4th of July parade. 10 years later, only one of them still kneads bread dough with her own hands on Saturday mornings, still walks the gravel path behind her house to check on the tomato plants, still answers the telephone with a voice that sounds awake. The other one does not, and the difference between them is not luck, it is not money, and it is not good genes, and it is certainly not that one of them was somehow spared the changes that come for every body after 70. Both of their bodies changed. Both of them felt it. The difference is what each of them did, quietly, daily, almost invisibly, after the changes began. Tonight, I want to tell you both of their stories, side by side, the way I watched them unfold. Because hidden inside these two ordinary lives is the truth about what happens to your body after 70, the truth that many doctors will finally explain to you now, plainly if you ask them, and the truth about how much of your future is still, even tonight, in your own hands. Let me introduce them to you properly, because you deserve to know them the way I did. The first woman I will call Ruth. Ruth was 72 that summer, a retired school secretary from a little town in Ohio. The kind of town with one blinking yellow light at the main intersection and a diner where the coffee comes in thick white mugs. She had raised 3 children, buried a husband she loved dearly, and kept a house that always smelled faintly of cinnamon and lemon polish. Ruth was not an athlete. She had never jogged a day in her life, but she was a putterer, the kind of woman who was always up doing something, watering the ferns on the porch, carrying laundry down the basement stairs one careful step at a time, walking to the library, because, as she liked to say, her legs were still working and she intended to keep the appointment she had made with them. The second woman I will call Dorothy. Dot to everyone who knew her. Same age, same town, same summer. Dot had worked 30 years as a bookkeeper for the grain elevator out on Route 9, sharp as a tack with numbers, the kind of woman who could add a column of figures in her head faster than you could type them. She had raised 2 sons, and her husband had passed the same year Ruth's did, which is a heavier sentence than it looks. Dot lived in a neat brick ranch house with a recliner positioned just so in front of the television, and a kitchen table where she did her crossword puzzles every morning with a cup of black coffee going slowly cold beside her. Dot was not lazy. I want you to hear me clearly on that, because her story is not a story about a lazy woman. Dot was tired, Dot was grieving, and Dot had quietly come to believe something that many of us come to believe after 70, something she would never have said out loud. That the best years of her body were behind her, and the sensible thing now was to sit down and be careful. Same town, same age, same season of loss, and yet there was one detail, one small detail that already differed between them that summer. Ruth had a habit. Every morning after breakfast she walked not far, not fast, just to the end of her street and back, about 15 minutes, waving at the neighbors, stopping to admire someone's roses. Dot had a habit too. Every morning after breakfast she sat down. And here is what I need you to understand before we go any further. Neither of those habits felt like a decision about the future. They felt like nothing at all. That is exactly what makes them so powerful. And it is the first hidden truth of the body after 70. Your body at this age is always listening to what you do repeatedly, far more than to what you intend. Winter came to that little Ohio town the way winter does, with gray skies and a wind that found the gaps in every window frame. And that winter, both women began to feel it. The quiet signals the body sends after 70, the ones that are so easy to dismiss and so costly to ignore. For Ruth, it started in the mornings. She would wake and her knees would be stiff, as if someone had poured cold gravy into the joints overnight. Her first steps to the bathroom were careful, shuffling steps, holding the wall. It frightened her a little, if I am honest. She told me about it one morning over coffee in her kitchen, her hands wrapped around the mug for warmth, the steam rising between us. I feel 100 years old for the first 10 minutes, she said, and then, somehow, I feel 60 again. And that right there is teaching number 1. And it is one of the most hopeful things researchers have observed about the aging body. Much of the stiffness of the morning is not damage, it is stillness. During the night, the fluid that cushions our joints settles, the muscles cool and shorten, and the body, like an old farmhouse on a cold morning, simply takes longer to warm up. Doctors at places like the Mayo Clinic have long observed that gentle, regular movement is one of the most reliable ways to keep that morning stiffness from hardening into something permanent. Motion, at our age, is lotion. I have said that for 20 years and I have never once seen it fail. Now Dot felt the same stiffness that winter, the same cold gravy knees, the same careful shuffle to the bathroom. But Dot read the signal differently. Where Ruth heard her body saying, "Warm me up," Dot heard her body saying, "Slow down, be careful, your walking days are numbered." And so she was careful. She stopped walking to the post office. It was icy after all, and her son agreed with her on the phone. Because sons worry, she ordered a few more things delivered. She moved her crossword puzzles and her coffee and her reading glasses into the living room, closer to the recliner, so she would not have to go back and forth. Every single choice was reasonable. That is what makes this so important for you and me to see clearly. Decline after 70 rarely arrives as a bad decision. It arrives as 100 reasonable ones. Have you ever made a change like that, a sensible little change, and noticed months later that it quietly took something with it? You are not alone. Almost every person I have sat with in 20+ years of working with older adults has a story exactly like it. By the end of that first winter, the difference between the two women was still almost invisible. Ruth's morning walk had shrunk. Some icy days it was just up and down her own driveway, but it had not disappeared. Dot's world had shrunk by perhaps 100 steps a day. 100 steps, nothing, you would think. But your body keeps a ledger, my friend, even when you do not. Spring came, and with it the second teaching, which lives in the muscles. Here is something many doctors will now explain openly, though most of us were never told. After about 60, and more quickly after 70, the body begins to lose muscle, slowly, silently, at a trickle that research suggests can reach a few percent every year if nothing pushes back against it. The medical term sounds frightening, so let me put it in kitchen table English. Your muscles are like a savings account, and after 70, life makes small withdrawals whether you like it or not. The only question is whether you are making deposits, and here is the part that matters. The deposits do not have to be large, they have to be regular. Ruth made deposits without knowing she was doing it. That spring she planted her garden, as she had every spring for 40 years, turning soil with a hand trowel, kneeling on an old foam pad, hauling a half-full watering can because the full one had gotten too heavy, and she had adapted without drama or complaint. She carried her own groceries in from the car, one bag at a time, 4 trips instead of 2. She did not call any of this exercise. She called it Tuesday. That spring watched her son mow her lawn from the kitchen window. He meant well, oh, he meant so well. He had told her, "Mom, you've earned your rest, let us handle it." And she had earned her rest. Both of them had. But here is the quiet cruelty of the body after 70, the second hidden truth. The body does not understand retirement. It understands use. The muscle you rest, the body assumes you no longer need, and it quietly reclaims the material for other purposes. Researchers at institutions like the National Institute on Aging have observed this pattern for decades. Strength is not lost all at once in a dramatic collapse. It is lost the way daylight fades in October, a minute at a time, so gradually that you adjust to each small dimming and barely notice the dark arriving. Let me pause here, my friend, and speak to you directly, because we are about to see what happens in the second year, and I do not want you to carry this next part alone. If you are recognizing yourself in tonight, if the reasonable little changes, the helpful children, the comfortable chair are all sounding familiar, I want you to hear 2 things before we go on. First, nothing I am telling you is meant as blame. Dot was a wise, hard-working woman who did what almost all of us would have done. Second, and I will say this more than once tonight because it is the beating heart of everything I know to be true, it is never too late, not at 72. Not at 82. The research on this is remarkably consistent, and my own 2 decades of sitting across kitchen tables from people just like you confirms it over and over. If that lands somewhere in you, would you type the word hope in the comments before we continue? It tells me you are still with me, and it may be the first thing someone else scrolling by tonight needs to see. The second year is where the 2 portraits begin to separate in earnest, and it is where the 3rd and 4th teachings live, in the heart, in the balance, in the blood itself. Ruth at 73 had a scare. I will not pretend she did not. One July morning, halfway through her walk, she felt a flutter in her chest, a strange quick tapping, like a small bird trapped behind her ribs. She sat down on the miller's stone wall until it passed, and then she did something that changed everything. She told her doctor about it, plainly, without embarrassment. Many doctors observe that the simple act of reporting symptoms early and honestly, is one of the great dividing lines in how the 70s unfold. The flutter turned out to be something common and manageable, but the visit turned into a longer conversation, the kind I wish every person over 70 got to have. Her doctor explained that her heart was a muscle like any other, that it responded to gentle, regular demand the way her legs did, and that the walk she had stubbornly kept was very likely the reason that flutter was a warning and not an event. He also explained something researchers at places like Johns Hopkins have observed for years, that blood sugar after 70 behaves differently. The body's ability to manage it grows sluggish, and long sitting makes it sluggish in a hurry, while even modest daily movement acts like a key that helps the body's cells open their doors to sugar again. Ruth listened. She went home and made exactly one change. After her biggest meal of the day, she began walking the loop around her block. 10 slow minutes, waving at the same neighbors. She called it letting dinner settle. Her doctor called it one of the single most useful habits an older adult can build. Dot's second year unfolded more quietly, and I want to tell it gently. With her world now smaller, Dot's days began to blur. The recliner held her longer each morning. Her sleep went strange, and this is the fourth teaching, one of the most common and least understood changes after 70. Sleep reshapes itself in our later years. It grows lighter, it fragments, we wake at 4 in the morning and cannot find our way back. Many people interpret this as failure and respond by going to bed earlier, napping longer, resting more. But researchers who study aging, including work supported by the National Institute on Aging, have observed that the answer is usually not more time in bed, it is more reason to be out of it. Daylight, movement, and purpose are the three threads that stitch deep sleep back together. Dot had let go of all three without meaning to. And here is where the emotional heart enters the story, because loneliness crept into Dot's house that year the way cold creeps under a door. Her sons called on Sundays. The television talked all day, but a television, as you and I both know, never asks how you slept. Studies from places like Harvard Medical School have linked persistent loneliness in older adults to effects on the body as measurable as anything in a medicine cabinet, on the heart, on memory, on the very chemistry of the brain. I do not say that to frighten you. I say it because connection is not a luxury after 70. It is a nutrient. Meanwhile, 2 streets over, Ruth's memory seemed to be holding steady, even sharpening. She had taken to reading mystery novels and discussing them loudly with her daughter on the phone, and she swore the walking helped her think. She was, it turns out, standing on solid scientific ground. Researchers have repeatedly observed that regular movement increases blood flow to the brain, and that the aging brain remains far more capable of building new connections than we were told a generation ago. The brain, like the garden, keeps responding to cultivation. It slows. It does not stop. Now comes the part of the story I love most, and I need you to notice what it is not. It is not a rock bottom. It is not a diagnosis, a fall, a frightening ambulance ride. Dot's turning point was quieter than that, and far more like the ones I have seen in real life. It was a Saturday morning in October, almost 2.5 years after that summer when both women turned 72. Dot was at her kitchen table with her crossword, and through the window she saw Ruth go past. Ruth, now 74, carrying a pie tin covered with a checkered cloth, on her way to the church bake sale, walking at a pace Dot realized with a small shock she could no longer match. And Dot sat there, with the smell of her cooling coffee and the scratch of her pencil, and felt something rise up in her that was not quite envy and not quite grief. It was a question. When did I get so far behind? And is it too late for me? You already know my answer. It is never too late. But Dot did not know it yet, so the question did what honest questions do. It made her pick up the telephone. She called her doctor first, and I want to honor her for that, because she told the truth on that call, including how little she was moving. Her doctor did not scold her. Doctors who work with older adults have seen this story 1,000 times, and the good ones meet it with warmth. He asked her to do one thing, just one. Before their appointment, stand up from her kitchen chair 10 times each morning, holding the table if she needed to. 10 times. That was the whole prescription. Dot almost laughed, but she did it. And here is what many doctors observe and what the research supports. The body after 70 responds to effort with astonishing gratitude. Within 3 weeks, Dot reported the strangest thing. Her 4 a.m. wake-ups had softened. She was sleeping deeper. Within 2 months, she had added a walk to the mailbox and back, then to the corner. By Thanksgiving, she walked slowly, carefully, with her son on one arm, into the church hall for the holiday dinner. And Ruth was the first person to see her come through the door. I will tell you plainly that when Ruth saw her, she set down the sweet potato casserole she was carrying, walked across that hall with her arms open, and hugged Dot in front of everyone. And the two of them stood there a long moment, 2 old women in cardigans, while the room smelled of turkey and sage and somebody's pumpkin pie. Nothing about that moment was dramatic. Everything about it was the point. Dot had not crossed a finish line. She had crossed a doorway, from believing her body's changes were a sentence, to understanding they were a conversation. That, right there, is the hidden truth this whole story has been carrying. After 70, your body does not stop listening to you. It never stopped. It was waiting. Let me now put the 2 portraits side by side, the way I promised you at the beginning, so you can see with your own eyes what the small habits purchased across 10 years. The heart. Ruth, at 82, walks her garden path every morning. It is not icy, and her doctor shakes his head in happy disbelief at her numbers. Dot, after her turning point, never became a walker of Ruth's distances, but her 10-minute mailbox walks, done faithfully, steadied her own heart's rhythm and, her doctor told her, almost certainly added strong, independent years to her life. Two different levels, one shared lesson. The heart after 70 does not ask for heroics. It asks for regularity, the brain and memory. Ruth does her puzzles and her loud book discussions, and her mind is a bright kitchen with all the lights on. Dot found her own version. She began keeping the church's bake sale books, her old bookkeeping hands remembering the columns of figures, and the work gave her mornings a shape and her mind a job. Researchers have long observed that purpose plus movement plus connection is among the most protective combinations an aging brain can be given. Both women, in their own ways, take that medicine daily, the emotional heart. This one matters more than any other, and I will not hurry past it. Both women lost their husbands. Both women knew grief in their bones. The difference is that both eventually refused. Ruth by instinct, Dot by awakening. To let grief become isolation, connection, purpose, something to get up for. These are not soft comforts, my friend. They are structural, like the beams in a house. And energy, the blood sugar question, the get up and go question. Both women learned that energy after 70 is not something you wait to feel before acting. It is something that arrives after you act, the way warmth arrives after you begin to move on a cold morning. Act first. The feeling follows. Many of us were taught the reverse, and unlearning it is half the battle. If you are wondering, what exactly did they do? What could I start tonight, in my own kitchen, at my own pace? Here it is, the whole of it, the 5 small habits that changed both of their stories. Nothing here requires equipment, money, youth, or anyone's permission. First, a morning warm-up ritual. Before the day asks anything of you, give your body 5 gentle minutes, sitting tall in your chair, rolling your shoulders, circling your ankles, standing and sitting a few slow times with the table nearby for safety. You are not exercising, you are lighting the pilot light. Second, one daily walk with a name and a destination, however small. To the mailbox, to the corner, around the garden once. Ruth's secret was never distance, it was the appointment. Your legs keep the appointments you make with them. Make one, kindly, for tomorrow morning. Third, one sit-to-stand practice. 10 gentle risings from your kitchen chair each day, holding on as needed, is a deposit in the savings account of your muscles, the account that pays for your independence. Small deposits, regular ones. That is the entire philosophy. Fourth, a walk after your largest meal. Even 10 slow minutes, even around the inside of the house on a hard weather day. This one habit speaks directly to your blood sugar, your digestion, and your evening energy, all at once. And fifth, the one I will ask you to take most seriously, because the research and my own 20 years agree it may matter most. One daily act of connection, a telephone call you initiate, a wave that becomes a conversation, a standing invitation, something or someone to get up for. The body after 70 is fed by 3 tables. The kitchen table, the garden path, and the table of other people. Do not let the third one stand empty. You might consider starting with only the first of these tomorrow. Just the first. The others will come the way they came for Dot. One reasonable, hopeful step at a time. I want to leave you where this story ends, because it ends well. For both of them last spring on a warm Saturday morning, Ruth and Dot, now 82 years old, both of them, walked together to the church bake sale. Slowly, very slowly, I am told, with frequent stops to inspect other people's peonies and comment on the weather. It took them 40 minutes to walk what once took Ruth 10. Nobody timed them. Nobody cared. Ruth carried a rhubarb pie. Dot carried the cash box for the sale, because the bookkeeping, as everyone agreed, belonged to her. And when they arrived, they sat together at a folding table in the sunshine, 2 old friends, smelling of pie and cut grass, arguing pleasantly about whose tomatoes had come in better last summer. 2 women, same town, same age, same changes. Every single one of the changes I have described tonight came for both of them. The stiff mornings, the reshaped sleep, the fading muscle, the loneliness tapping at the window. The hidden truth, the doctors finally explain, is not that your body will change after 70. It will. The truth is that your body will also keep answering you. At 70, at 80, at 90, every single time you speak to it in the only language it has ever understood. Small, faithful, repeated acts of use and care. Ruth learned that early. Dot learned it later. Both of them learned it in time. And so can you. It is never too late. Not tonight, not at your age, not from your chair. If this story found you at the right moment, I would be grateful if you subscribed and tapped the bell, so we can keep walking together through the years ahead. And in the comments, tell me, are you a Ruth, a Dot, or a little of both? I read every single one, usually with my morning coffee, and I mean that literally. You are not done becoming. Take care of yourself tonight. I will see you in the next one.